At exactly 11:52 p.m. on April 3, 1995, two seemingly unrelated events occurred simultaneously. In the remote northeastern hills, Eleanor Hargrove stood alone in a dark, wind-blown orchard. Over 1,000 kilometers away, a 29-year-old tech executive named Shekhar was swerving violently off a rain-slicked highway. For 5 years, Eleanor had carried the silent guilt of her younger sister's death. But standing among those ancient apple trees, she made a decision. Instead of burying her shame for the land to consume, she spoke her failures aloud into the dark, intentionally starving the ground of the secrecy it had fed on for decades. Look at this dark, empty stretch of paved road. When the orchard's hold broke, the release of trapped energy didn't manifest as an explosion or an oncoming vehicle. It arrived here instantly as a sheer, invisible force, hitting Shekhar's car and throwing it off the asphalt. The national highway near Durgapur operates on the strict physics of velocity, friction, and weather, but the northeastern hills operate on an older, quieter logic, the understanding that land physically carries the weight of what happens to it. When a physical object like a moving vehicle intersects with an invisible weight like generations of unvoiced grief, the resulting impact defies geography. To understand how a businessman in Bengal was struck down by a folklore researcher in the mountains, we have to trace the threads back 50 years. In this photograph of a 1940s medical mission, you can see the reality of British healthcare efforts in India. Edmund Hargrove walked into remote northeastern villages alone, carrying a medical bag and a strict belief that treating a person was a physical act of respect. A patient once handed him a translated verse from the Quran: "Whoever saves one life, it is as though he has saved all of humanity." Edmund applied that literal calculus to his work, eventually dying while placing himself between British soldiers and the villagers he was treating. His wife, Catherine, survived him, carrying the terrible knowledge that she had inadvertently revealed his location to the soldiers. Needing a place to put her guilt, she planted an orchard on a specific elevated plateau, a plot of land the locals avoided because it held the bodies of epidemic victims, buried hastily without their proper rites. Every morning for 15 years, Catherine walked into the trees and whispered her confessions. She didn't realize that the unfinished ground beneath the roots was listening, and over time it learned to consume human shame, to compensate for the rituals it was never given. It waited patiently for decades until Eleanor arrived. But Eleanor understood the mechanics of folklore. By speaking her sister's name aloud and refusing to hide her regret, she broke the ground's holding pattern. Unresolved grief, when buried in soil that is already starved for closure, stops being a private burden. It becomes a metaphysical trap, accumulating density until someone finally forces a reckoning. This wide view of a busy 1990s Kolkata intersection captures the exact moment India's economy was opening up to the world. Shekhar saw a massive gap between what computers could do and what local businesses understood, and he built a startup called NovaBridge to close it. Notice the bulky CRT monitors and early desktop computers in this office. NovaBridge was thriving during this technological boom. Shekhar had just finalized the terms for an international expansion in Singapore, operating at the absolute peak of urban digital ambition. This map illustrates the physical divide. On one side, Kolkata, racing toward globalization. On the other, the remote northeastern hill district, where a cursed plot of land was holding a 50-year-old silence. The exact second Eleanor starved the orchard, the ground released its pent-up energy. The shockwave bypassed the physical distance entirely, violently intersecting with Shekhar's route home on the highway. When a history of buried secrets is suddenly starved of its fuel, the resulting release of energy is entirely indiscriminate. It travels rapidly outward, striking anyone caught in its path. Shekhar survived the crash but fell into a deep coma. His international deal halted immediately. 9 days later, his son Ram was born into a world where his father was physically present but entirely absent. His wife Sitha responded with strict numerical discipline. Over the next 6 years, she attended every single Novabridge board meeting, writing out the minutes by hand across 73 separate sessions, so Shekhar would have a complete account when he woke up. His brother Kiran applied the exact same logic. He visited Shekhar's hospital room on the second Thursday of every month, sitting beside the bed for 316 nearly identical visits. In images like this one, showing children with headsets at an internet cafe, you can see the new digital era taking shape. The children of the scattered Novabridge founders used early social networks and multiplayer games to rebuild the professional bond their parents had lost across the distance. True loyalty is rarely a single dramatic rescue. It is the mathematical maintenance of a routine, showing up, taking notes, logging on, holding a space open for someone who may never actually walk back into it. In February 2025, the monitors in Shekhar's hospital room finally registered a shift. He opened his eyes, took in the flat morning light, and met his 30-year-old son for the very first time. Notice the thick mist hanging over this remote green valley. Once Shekhar could hold a conversation, Kiran showed him a photograph of this exact location. For 6 years, Kiran had secretly navigated colonial-era property laws to purchase the checkpoint property, the specific hillside where the collision originated. The Novabridge children, now adults, took over the site's renovation. They cut down the overgrown apple trees, ground down the stumps, and constructed the high-tech We Are 90s museum directly over the massive ancient roots that still gripped the epidemic graves. They didn't try to dig out the history or pretend the epidemic never happened. Instead, they built their server rooms and augmented reality projections directly into the cave system beneath the slope, deliberately anchoring their digital future to the site of an analog trauma. A new generation cannot erase the historical scars left by their grandparents, but by cutting away the overgrowth and bringing those hidden truths into the light, they can construct a foundation solid enough to finally move forward.